What's up, guys? Welcome back here to another episode of Watching the Meta, the weekly series where we take a look at the Magic Online results over the weekend in Modern, Pioneer, and Standard, and if applicable, sometimes some live paper events as well, which we do have a couple for Modern this week. Nothing for Standard or Pioneer, but definitely a couple of RCs to check out for Modern. And we kind of take a look and see what the metagame is, what people are playing, and we also take a look in the spice corner and see if we can find a little bit of spice within all of the Boros, Grinding Breach, Eldrazi conglomerate, I guess, as it were. And we are going to start things off, as we always do, with the Modern format. And this is kind of what you would expect from Modern at this point. Well, I mean, I guess maybe not what you would expect, because Boros did take a bit of a dip here from 16.4% down to 10.9%, so a little bit of a decrease there. Breach roughly around the same. I will say I was a bit surprised to see Grinding Breach at only 16.8%. I know I say only because it was 16 out of the top 32 at the regional championship in Portland, which is quite a bit, not gonna lie. So I was a little surprised to see that the metagame share kind of dropped off a little bit, because most of that was due to the Magic Online participation. There wasn't a ton of it on Magic Online, although it did win 2 challenges, so even though there wasn't many people playing it, it's still kind of crushing challenges. Gruul Eldrazi, roughly the same. Orzhov Blink, about the same. Oculus, slight downtick, and then you can kind of see everything else from there. Temur Eldrazi, roughly about the same too. So it kind of seems like we've sort of settled into this 3.5 deck format between Energy, Eldrazi, Grinding Breach, and then Orzhov Blink kind of sort of on the outside looking in. It does still have a reasonable metagame representation, but I do think it is pretty weak against both Eldrazi and Boros, so maybe it's good enough against Breach to the point where people are interested in playing it more, but I've been pretty happy from both the Boros and the Eldrazi side of things playing against the white-black deck. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Does Orzhov Blink have better matchups in some more of the fringe decks? That's kind of what I'm assuming is the case. But yeah, this is the metagame. As you can see, the challenge winners right there on your screen. 2 Breach, 2 Eldrazi, and then some 1-ups there. Amulet Titan and Boros were the 2 winners of the regional championships that took place in Japan and Portland. And we're going to kick things off today with a bit of spice here from SSE Jemba in 15th place. Now, you might look at this and you might say to yourself, well, this is kind of just a normal-looking black-white deck. But as you can see, there's a forest highlighted here. There's a bit of a green splash here, which makes things a little interesting. So we are kind of playing the normal white-black base, Overlord of the Baelmerk, Felia, Solitude, Recruiter of the Guard, stuff like that. But we have a light green splash for 1 Eternal Witness to be able to tutor 4 with Recruiter, 1 Anaphens of the Foremost, just, 3 mana 4/4 Graveyard Hate. And what I love about this list is 3 Disciple of Freyalise. So for those of you who don't know, if you play an MDFC, say Disciple of Freyalise, Witch Enchanter, Bogart Trawler, any one of those MDFCs, and then you follow it up with a Flicker Wisp, and you flicker the land, the MDFC land, it comes back as the creature side. So what you can do is you can play Disciple as a land, and then pay 3 mana for a Flicker Wisp, and then get this 6-drop immediately into play, and you get the trigger. When it enters, sacrifice a creature, gain and draw where X is that creature's power, and at the bare minimum, you at least have a Flicker Wisp in play. So draw 3, gain 3, not too bad. And then there's also a Yasharn Implaceable Earth. And then another thing that I just noticed here, 4 Birthing Ritual. To help you go up the chain, you can play a 2-drop early, like maybe a Felia or something. You can sack that, go find a 3, and it really helps you find whatever you're looking for in terms of, like I said, you sack a Felia to go get a Skyclave, maybe you get a Witness that gets back the Felia. A lot of cool lines here with these Birthing Rituals, so shout out to SSE Jemba. Bit of a blast from the past with this one here. Seo Mungaki in 6th place here, one of the challenges, so did happen to make a top 8. Wilderness Reclamation. If you are interested in decks that don't cast a lot of spells on your own turn, then boy do I have the deck for you. Cast Wilderness Reclamation, hold up all of your mana, eventually get to stuff like Cryptic Command, you have Memory Deluge to find your 1 Nexus of Fate, you can take a bunch of turns that way, and yeah, I mean, there's really Solitude to me looks to be the only win condition. I don't see, there's 1 Hall of Storm Giants. A Wilderness Reclamation classic, if you ask me. But yeah, just I don't know, a lot of card draw, a lot of counter spells, wilderness reclamation. Just wanted to highlight this one because it made top 8, and I never really seen a wilderness reclamation deck do well in I can't even remember how long. And now we take a look at the winner's circle. So for those of you who are new to the series, we do try to do 2 spicy decks and 2 winners, 2 people who won the challenges this weekend. And I just wanted to show you, this is what the Gruul Eldrazi deck looks like. This seems to be the stock version. I believe this is for MTGs from the regional championships a few weeks ago in Prague, where you're playing the 2 Chrysalis main, the max copies of Karn, because as much as I don't like Karn in a lot of matchups, I do think you need it in order to beat the Breach deck. So yeah, Karn doesn't come up a lot, maybe weaker like against Boros and the Blink decks, but still good enough, and you kind of do need it against Breach. But yeah, I mean, this is 3 Emeralds, 4 Myco Spawns, 3 World Breakers. We have the other 2 Chrysalis in the board, along with 3 Stone Rains for the Mirror. I was considering playing 4, just because that card is so important in the Mirror matches. And then 3 Kozilek's returned with the 4th in the sideboard. So yeah, that is what the Eldrazi decks, like kind of the more popular versions of Eldrazi are looking like. So just wanted to showcase that to you guys. The other deck that's everywhere is Breach, Grinding Station. Now, this particular version might look a little bit different than some that you're used to. So this one, pulled this from the challenge that was won by Slasher21. I believe this is Tangrams, aka David Inglis's list from the regional championships in Portland, where Tangrams has decided to remove Tamiyo entirely from the deck, which is a little surprising to me because of how well it works with Mox Amber, but as you can see, we're down to 1 Mox Amber, so that is kind of, again, making up for the fact that you have less legends. And what's nice about that is it kind of alleviates the pressures early on the mana a little bit, where you don't necessarily need blue as early. The Teamer versions need blue on 1 for Tamiyo. This version has no Tamiyos, no Preordains, so we have nothing that we need blue on turn 1 for. And what that lets you do is it lets you kind of change your mana base around to the point where you don't need to focus on having blue on turn 1, where, I mean, you do still need it for Emery sometimes, so I shouldn't say that, but if you have an Opal active, then that can cast the Emery for you. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight this version because it was very different, right? 1 Flage, no Tamiyos, 1 Chromatic Star, 3 Portable Holes, 2 Lanterns main, 2 Savine's Reclamation, playing the Grape Shot and the Fastest Oracle, both in the main, and then 1 Lightning Bolt, no Unholy Heats in the main, and I believe there was 1 Unholy Heat in the sideboard, 2 Draenith, 2 Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and 2 Nature's Claim. So just to give you an idea of what the different Breach lists look like, there you go. This is Slasher21, and I believe, again, this is Tangram's list from the RC in Portland. And now we take a trip on over to Pioneer, also known as the Rakdos format. I'm not really sure what happened. Rakdos Demons, again, there was only 5 challenges, so keep in mind that this data is a small enough sample size, but Rakdos Demons meta share has gone from 11.9% to 23.8%, which is, for you math folks out there at home, almost a quarter of the format. Now, I don't know if this was just a particular off weekend, because we've been noticing Rakdos Demons had actually been slightly decreasing week to week, it seemed like, and it seemed like Gruul Prowess was going to be taking over as the top deck for a moment, but I don't know, people just decided to play Rakdos Demons. I think it has something to do, again, I hate to say this, but with the copy-paste model, where people see that Rakdos Demons wins a challenge, which I believe it won the first challenge, I think it won the Friday one, and then everybody just copies it for the weekend. And that's kind of where, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's where Pioneer is right now. There's not a ton of innovation. People aren't really motivated to play the format, and they're kind of just copy-pasting deck lists. And that's, I think, what happens when you see Demons at this much of a percentage. And maybe it's the case anyways. Maybe Demons is the most popular and the best deck in the format. Not 100% sure. Gruul Prowess took a big dip, down to 9 from 16. Rakdos Prowess, small dip, not as big of a dip as Gruul. Obviously, we talked about Demons. Devotion, about the same. Esper Bounce, Dimir Ninjas, all these numbers are roughly about the same. And just to prove my point, a slight uptick in Atarka Red, which happened to win a challenge. I believe it might have won the second challenge of the weekend. So, second challenge, people start copying it. You get the idea. So, I do have some interesting decks to take a look at today. Again, 2 spicy and 2 winners. Alrighty, the first deck that I have for you here is from K-Richa13 in 23rd place We have a little bit of an Aftermath Analyst combo. Analyst being able to return lands like Lotus Field, make a bunch of mana if you have Spelunking. We have an infinite 2-card combo with Bloodthirsty Conqueror and Dina Soul Steeper. Whenever they lose life, you gain that much life. Whenever you gain life, they lose 1 life. You kind of see where this is going, right? And then you have Dryad of the Elysian Grove to allow you to play additional lands. I don't know if there's any synergy with Dryad. Like, there's no Dread Presence, well, obviously we don't have Valakut and Pioneer. And then you have both Iridescent Vine Lasher, so landfall, they lose a life, we can offspring itself, and then Chatty Offshoot, landfall, you gain a life, which, funny enough, the Chatty Offshoots, not only they're good against the red decks that have a lot of burn spells, they actually turn on the combo when you have Bloodthirsty and Dina in play, so I find that pretty hilarious too. 1 copy of Lumra to be able to just kind of have a bigger version of the Aftermath Analyst, and yeah, this looks pretty cool. There's some interesting things. You can like combo kill them either with just Scapeshift and Iridescent Vine Lasher. You can set up Dina Bloodthirsty Conqueror, and then, I mean, there's just a lot of cool lanes you can search for off of Scapeshift too, so pretty interesting take. CrusherBot BG. Those modern viewers at home may remember CrusherBot's name from playing a lot of Hammer Time in Modern. It's basically been their pet deck, and they have bestowed upon us a Hammer Time deck in Pioneer. So this is, I think, pretty different from lists that I've seen before. I have seen some Hammer decks, but I've never seen, can't remember that I've seen Nahiri Forged in Fury, which is a 6-drop, but has affinity for equipments. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library, you can play that card this turn, and you may cast equipment spells this way without paying their mana cost, which you do have 19 different equipments here. Well, actually 16, because this is not an equipment. But 4 Chainsaw, 4 Colossus Hammer, 4 Leyline Axe. That's a really cool combo too, just Colossus Hammer and Leyline Axe. If you have Axe in the battlefield and you have Colossus Hammer with a way to move it, like Blacksmith's Talent or even something like Kemba Ka Enduring. What's interesting to me, I'm just looking at this deck list, where are the Sigardazades? I'm confused. I guess we have both Kemba and Blacksmith's Talent to kind of mimic the Sigardazades, but I'm a little surprised to still not see them here, because it does give you a bit of a nut draw potential. But yeah, really sweet looking list from CrusherBot. I keep looking at these deck lists for Pioneer and keep thinking to myself, if I play Pioneer one day, maybe I'll get to play one of these decks. But until then, it's on the sidelines. And then, just to go little posterity's sake, just for the winner's circle here real quick, this is what Demons looks like. We're not going to spend too much time on it. It's got 2 Blade of the Onis. It's got Fable the Mirror Breaker, Unholy Annex. This is the way that the Demons decks have been looking for the past, 5 months at this point? So, yeah, it's Demons. And then, last but not least, this is what the Gruul Prowess decks are looking like. I believe I might have covered this a couple of weeks ago on one of the winner circles, but, I mean, come on. This is just a standard deck. Somebody decided to take their standard deck, add 4 Soulscar Mages, 4 Stomping Grounds, a couple of Pathways, and 4 Reckless Rages, and just send it. And it turns out the cards are powerful enough to be good in other formats as well. The red cards are messed up, and yeah, this is what the Prowess decks look like. So that is going to do it for Pioneer, but we have one format left to take a look at. And that final format is Standard. Now, this graph, I hope, is going to look a lot different next week when we have access to Aetherdrift. So this might be a final send-off for Duskmourn / Foundations Standard. I don't know if you call it Duskmourn or Foundations. I would assume Foundations, although the format kind of revolves a lot more around Duskmourn cards than Foundation cards. But yeah, Esper Pixie, still the top dog, Golgari mid-range. Really nothing has changed here. Slight uptick in Gruul. I guess there is a massive uptick in Dimir mid-range. And again, I'm going to say this. These MTGO players out there, they love to copy-paste. I saw that Mogged won the first challenge on Friday with the mirror mid-range, and then everybody's got to copy-paste it. We can build our own decks, right? Eventually, at some point. Is that too much to ask? Well, it's fine. Dimir mid-range has a ton of representation, even more so than Dimir Bounce, which is shocking to me. We get the 5-color Overlords. That one, I'm not 100% positive because I know it won the Showcase Challenge, but that was on Sunday, so you can't use the excuse of people copy-pasting the list. I think people just wanted to play some Overlords this weekend, a little bit of Domain. Yeah, Jeskai Oculus, pretty significant uptick too. I was surprised when I was going through the challenge data, there was the first challenge on Friday, I think had 5 or 6 Jeskai Oculus in the top 32, and I was like, whoa, what happened? And then there was like none of the other ones. So it was pretty weird how it was distributed in terms of the number of decks. But I got 3 decks for you to take a look at. So the first one from Soul, I don't know if it's Soul or Soy, MB Galade, 15th place. Now, this is a bounce deck, but before you yell at me in the comments, this is a bounce deck that has red. So it's Grixis, not Esper. We are playing Torch the Tower, and I believe there was a couple of copies of Inties and Fear of Missing Out as our red cards. So you have Fear of Missing Out, which is sometimes can be interesting to bounce with something like Town Ain't Big Enough. But the important part here is you get to play Prophetic Memory, where you have, now that you have Fear of Missing Out and Steam Core Scholar, and to pair with Prophetic Memory, you have a lot more ways to draw extra cards. You can even Fear of Isolation to pick up Prophetic Memory, to trigger it again, give you another extra card that one turn. It's weird to see Shaving on Hopeless Nightmare and nowhere to run, but you gotta make room somewhere. Still have a couple of Kaidos here. And then, again, Torch I think is a big one, because you do have a lot of random stuff to sacrifice. This one's even playing Spyglass Siren too, so it's kind of like a hybrid between Blue-Black Mid and Esper Pixie, but with red cards and props. It's a weird amalgamation, but I kind of like it, and maybe something that gets even better with those new cards like Mako, and what was the other one? There's a couple of Aetherdrift cards, but definitely one to look out for. I alluded to it earlier. Mogged has won a challenge with Dimir Midrange. A little surprising to see a lot of people still playing Dimir Midrange for over Dimir Bounce. I'm not entirely sure what matchup spread the midrange version is better than the bounce version, because I'm assuming in the heads up bounce is favored, but maybe I'm just completely off base there. 4 Deep Cavern Bat, Enduring Curiosity, Flood Pits Drowner, Spyglass Siren. This is kind of like what the midrange decks looked before the Duskmourn and bounce stuff really came into popularity. 2 Mockingbirds, 1 Saiba Cryptomancer, 1 main Tidebinder, only 1 Fairy Mastermind, which is usually if you looked at a Dimir midrange deck prior to Foundations, you would have always seen them with 4 copies of Mastermind. So very interesting to see only 1 here. And then sideboard, pretty standard stuff too. Just wanted to highlight this, 3 Soulstones, as, just an interesting Dimir list that does not have this Town Ain't Big Enough in it. Alright, for those of you who have made it this far into the video, I did save the best for last. Now, there was a tournament in Japan that took place this past weekend, and to my knowledge, I believe it is the first big, I think it was 450 people, first large event with Aetherdrift cards. Now, I went through all the deck lists. The deck lists leave a little bit to be desired. But there was one really spicy one that I wanted to show you guys from second place in that event. This is Gruul Delirium, ? So you have a lot of the Delirium stuff, right? Patchwork Beastie, Fear of Missing Out, Inti, and then you even have a new card like Dredger's Insight to be able to help set up Delirium more. This is just mill 4 and get an artifact, creature, or land. And it itself is an enchantment, which I think is a huge addition to this deck, where before you had to play like Cash Grab, which was an instant. You already have a bunch of instants. Seed of Hope, which you want to play anyways. You'll see there's 4 copies of Seed of Hope here for curve considerations. But what I like about Dredger's Insight is the fact that it is your enabler, but also your unique type. You don't have a ton of enchantments. So I think that's awesome. Some of the more aggressive Delirium cards like Wildfire Wicker Folk and Violent Urge, those are gone from the deck. The Omnivorous Flytrap, gone from the deck. And we have replaced those with 4 Draconautics Engineer and 4 Afterburner Expert, which I think is a really cool idea because, for example, let's say you cast Dredger's Insight and you mill over an Expert and an Engineer. You can take the Engineer, put the Expert into the graveyard, then next turn you can just pay 2 mana for the Engineer, 1 mana to activate it. When you activate the Exhaust ability, the Afterburner Expert trigger goes in the stack. Expert then comes into play before the Engineer ability resolves. So 4-2 comes into play, gets haste off Engineer, you now have a 4-2 haste. And if you have multiple experts in the graveyard, it gets kind of out of control. So I really, really like the way this looks, and I cannot wait to try something like that. There's even some cauldrons in the board. You got a couple Nemesis, a whole bunch of one-ups here. But yeah, this is a really interesting take, and I had not really thought about playing Engineer and Afterburner Expert in kind of the Delirium core, but now that I've seen it, I'm probably going to spend some time on this one, because this deck looks fire. And that is going to do it for another episode of Watching the Meta. Thank you all so much for tuning in. By the time you guys see this video, Aetherdrift is going to be already out. Honestly, when you're watching this video, I'll probably be streaming live on Twitch. Definitely go check out the Twitch stream if you want to see any of these really sweet brews on the horizon for Aetherdrift Standard. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a comment section down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Adios.